Hey visionaries, welcome to the next episode of Your Biggest Vision. I'm your host, Leah, and we are so lucky, and I am personally flattered to have David Neagle with us here today. He is one of the most inspiring people I know. He has helped me more than he probably realizes in my own journey through everything he's done, and we're going to hear a lot about that, but I'm very excited to share his wisdom with you and a lot about his story. He's one of the biggest visionaries I've ever met or heard of. And so I knew when I started this podcast that he was one of the first people I wanted to have on it. So let me just read a short bio about you, David, but thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. So David is a best-selling author, success and development coach, and the host of the Successful Mind podcast. After a near-death experience in 1989, David's perspective on life, its value, and his own potential completely transformed. Within 12 months following the accident, David tripled his income, and it hasn't stopped there. He has since gone on to build a multi-million-dollar business and supports people in transforming their lives all over the world. And David, you are one of the most inspiring people I know. So I found you a couple of years ago, actually, because I read and was moved by and was obsessed with the science of getting rich. And so I Googled everything I could about it. I still to this day listen to it once a month. It's just changed my life. And so, I really got to know you and your work more when you did your podcast, but I actually found you even before it started. I don't know if I've ever told you that story. So
no, you didn't.
Yeah. So thanks for being here, and thanks for doing such good work on the science of getting rich.
You're welcome. Thanks. Yeah, that book changed my life too. It was a profound moment when I came across that book.
Yeah. I think it really, comes to people when it's the right time for them to, when you can really receive it, it's pretty life-changing. And I have a question for you about it here. But first, I'd like to back up a little bit. So this show is about your vision and, acting on behalf of your vision and really realizing that no one's going to ever fight for your vision as much as you are. And sometimes it's even hard to do that for yourself. And so you've done so much in your life to follow your own vision, but it didn't always look like this. So would you talk to us a little bit about where you looked like before you had your business and maybe even a bit about your childhood?
Yeah, absolutely. So, my childhood was, I don't know how you want to put it, dysfunctional, but that's really become very cliche today. My parents broke up when I was 13 years old. I was born and raised in Chicago, but we briefly were living in Phoenix at the time that they got divorced. I moved back to Chicago with my mom and my brother. At that point, it was like a culture shock because we moved inner city. So, I was probably about 12, 13 at the time. 12, 13 years old. So my parents kind of went on a trip about their own life at that point in time. And I was really kind of left for my own. There was nobody giving me direction. And I was making a lot of poor choices in my life. The one thing that I did know how to do was work, though. I had this really good work ethic. I didn't really like it very much at the time, but I actually had this good work ethic. So that was helping me not get into much trouble. We call them side hustles today. Then it was just figuring out ways to make money. I would buy a car. For a couple $100, it would have like a broken alternator on it or something. Go get one from the junkyard, turn around, sell it for $700.
I love it.
Yeah, so those were ways that we did stuff then. But what I did was I hated school. Ever since I was a little kid, couldn't stand school. Didn't do well in school. Was always a DF, maybe a C student. At the best. I had a couple classes that I liked where I got good grades, but outside of that, I didn't. So when I was 17, I just quit. I just walked out. That was the age that you could go in and sign yourself out, and you didn't need your parents to do it. So everybody told me not to do it. I did it anyway. And then I was in the Army for a little while, came out of that. That really didn't go anywhere either. And I made the brilliant move of getting married and starting to have children. So I quickly found out that I did not have, I was creating all this responsibility and actually couldn't afford it. And it was devastating. It was just, my life all of a sudden started completely falling apart financially. My car was repossessed. I could not pay for the rent in my apartment. The guy wouldn't let us out of our lease. We had to leave in the middle of the night. We had to go into low-income housing. We were basically on food stamps. I was working every hour that I could possibly work, and we were living, we were surviving, but it was no way to really live and raise kids.
Right.
And then I had the accident, and in 1980, I had that accident. So what the accident did for me was it gave me a sense of urgency to change that I didn't have before. I was like, oh shit, like you could die, like people die, right? I mean, you think about
this
that.
happens. Yeah.
It really happens, and it could happen to you young, and it could happen to me. And I realized if I had died that day that I got sucked through that dam, I would have left nothing but problems for my wife and my children. So it was like, okay, I need to change. But now it was, how do you change? Like I had no idea, right? There was no internet back then. It was going to the library and starting to read books. I didn't know about self-improvement. I didn't know about professional development. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know where to start.
Right.
And I was working so much, I couldn't do the obvious thing, which was go back to college, right? Like go get an education. I didn't have the time or the money to do it. And I was struggling so bad, and I was exhausted. I was tired. I was like extremely frustrated and angry. And in a real peak intense moment one night while I was working, after I got yelled at twice by my bosses that day, I just started crying. I broke down crying in the back of this trailer that I was loading food into. And a little voice in my head said, change your attitude. And I thought to myself, could that really be the answer? Like, I don't, I mean, I knew my attitude was bad, but I didn't see how that would change my life.
Right.
My income, when I did it, I changed my attitude. I changed 3 specific things in my attitude, and my income tripled in a month. And I was like, what the hell just happened? Like, how is that even possible?
So this was after your accident.
Yeah, this was after the accident.
So this is when you had that sort of kick and you were just trying to figure it out and didn't really know how, and then you saw this change.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I saw the change, and that's what inspired me. I'm like, I have to figure out what I did, because if I understand it, because I completely didn't understand it, and everybody was just telling me you got lucky.
Right. Wow.
And I'm like, no, maybe I got lucky, but there's something else to this. It is not a coincidence that I decided to make this attitude change, and very specific things, I might add. And then 30 days later, my income triples, right?
Right.
How does that happen?
Right.
When I'm getting disciplined 30 days before, like they're ready to fire me.
Right.
Where I'm working, So then that inspired me to it set me on a path for 7 years of studying. And I was basically studying me, like what's wrong with me? What didn't I learn? What bad habits and what bad thinking processes do I have that I need to change? And how do I also, I didn't even know what emotional intelligence was at the time. Mm-hmm. I knew that mine wasn't good. That's what I did know. So how do I fix that?
Right.
And that was a process of 7 years of just except for my wife and my kids, everything else I got out of my life. I stopped listening to music. I stopped going to movies.
Wow.
Stopped watching television. All I did in my spare time was read or listen to books on tape at that time.
Wow. What an amazing story. So before your accident, before you went through this journey, before you started studying, when you were living, in a way that is really just surviving, not really living, would you say that you had a vision for how you thought things would get better? Or were you like not even that to that point where you were seeing a future? You were just like trying to get through the day? Secretly,
I had a feeling that I was supposed to do something big.
You did.
But I had heard so many times, like, don't be a dreamer. They used to say, like, my mom used to make fun of my father because he wanted to be an entrepreneur, but he didn't really know how either. And her and my grandmother would make these jokes back and forth. Oh, he's not a responsible man that can hold down a job for a long, he's always trying to get involved, his pipe dreams, stuff like that.
Right.
And I didn't know if this feeling that I had that I could do something bigger was real.
Right.
Or even what it would be. But I knew that I was terribly unsatisfied working for someone else. And I just could not see the rest of my life working for someone else. Like that was the most it was like I couldn't breathe. It was like the most depressing thing I could think of. Even though I did work for a company that allowed me to bridge the gap while I was learning, which is where I tripled my income, by the way. But it gave me the income and the time to study to get my head on straight, so that I could realize that, oh, actually, I'm an entrepreneur. That's why I can't work for anybody else. It's not that my attitude is bad.
Right.
I just don't like it. I want to be my own boss. I want to create my own life, and know that I could do that.
Right. I resonate with that so much. I definitely always feel like I had that voice in my head, and my version of people telling me I was a pipe dreamer rather, was more that I had been told growing up Catholic that I should be grateful for what I had. And so I was calling that voice inside my head that made me feel like I was meant for something different, greed, or grass is always greener syndrome, or, dissatisfaction. You'll never be satisfied. All these things I was telling myself that were masking what was just something I needed to eventually listen to. And, it was such a relief when I did leave my 9-to-5 job and when I did start my own business that I did feel like the grass is greener here. It's not still, I'm not chasing it anymore. I was wrong thinking something else. And so when people listen to that, or when people listen to this, or when you talk to people and that sparks something in them where they're like, you know what, I know that too. What advice would you give them for the first step they can take to really own that? Because it is scary if it means you might have to change quite a bit of your life to listen to it.
So I think, here's what I think. I think one of the, so there's things that we have to build in ourselves that are foundational, that allow us to do everything else well. And if we don't build those core things, those core foundations, then it becomes difficult with everything that we do. Life itself becomes difficult. And one of the biggest problems people have today is they're very insecure and they don't have a lot of confidence, but they have no idea how to change that. Like, it was supposed to be instilled in us as a child, but if it's not, so now what do you do?
Right.
It really comes, the first thing is really coming down to, you have to be really honest with yourself about this question. Do you trust yourself? Like, if you say you're going to do something, are you your word? Will you actually do it? Now, there has been a lot written about, self-trust, but I don't think anybody has even come close to understanding how important that actually is, because it is the basis of our self-esteem.
Right.
I can trust myself to do something. There's nothing that I can't do. Let's start there. But then I can learn to trust other things, because I know what it's like to hold myself accountable to doing something. So it makes a huge difference.
Do you think people can strengthen that self-trust by doing sort of little daily promises, like with working out or disciplining how you eat? Or do you think, you think that that's a helpful way to start?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
So I tell everybody, you start where you are.
Yeah.
One of the interesting things about it is that when you make that decision and that commitment with yourself that you're going to be your word, when you do that, you start evaluating what you say you're going to do differently, because it's, okay, now I can't just spout off at the mouth that I'm going to do this, because I'm going to make the commitment to actually do it. So you start to ask yourself, do I actually really want to do this? I think that's one of the first things. Because there's a lot of things that we need to do, like the doctor may say, hey, you need to lose weight, or you need to eat healthy, or whatever, but you're never going to do it unless you want to.
Right.
So whatever you're going to change, you got to ask yourself, do I want to? And if I don't, but I need to, how do I get myself to want to do it?
Right.
If I can get myself to want to do it, I'll keep the commitment. If I'm doing it because you tell me to do it, I'm not going to do it. Yeah.
Right. This is such awesome advice. And I love that idea of sort of figuring out how you can be more careful with your words and get better at it, because it's easier to do that and build up that way than reverse engineer and be like, oh, I'm just going to quit my job and hopefully I figure it out. If you've kind of proven that to yourself in smaller ways, then it makes the net a bit safer to jump. Although I have mixed opinions about that. I think you should jump anyway.
I think you should too. But I did do that jump. But also something that I recognized was that I practiced that being my word for 7 years before I made the jump.
Yeah.
Had I made the jump prior to that, I don't know that I would have had the discipline or really
Mhm.
understood commitment enough to actually bring the intelligence that I do have and actually make it work for myself. Because I
Right.
still made too many excuses about my own life, right?
Right.
Wouldn't show up to work, oh, I'm too sick today, I'm not going to work. That kind of, those kind of things, or not doing the best that I could once I got there.
Right, right, right. This is so powerful. It's such a reminder that how you do one thing is usually how you do everything. And when you're trying to transform one part of your life, it kind of does require looking at how you're showing up in every part of it. And I want to go back a little bit to what you said about sort of the way we're being raised now and how we're not being raised with sort of the confidence that we really need to step into a lot of what we're meant to do. And one of probably my single favorite episode of yours that you've ever done on your podcast, I listen to it regularly because it just hit me so clearly when you did it, is about the middle class or the Midwest mindset. And, I'm sure that that's not everyone's favorite topic, let's say. Like if they're in the middle class, they might find it somewhat, ruffling some feathers. But could you talk a little bit about how you think that mindset, which not everyone has, I understand that, but how you think it's plaguing our society and how you think that it's speaking to this lack of trust people now have in themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I can speak to it authentically because I was born and raised in the
Right.
Midwest, right?
And I'm from Colorado, so I'm also not standing out from the outside judging.
Yeah, well, yeah, there you go. So the thing about the Midwest, and then it also carries over just like middle class, just about anywhere, is that we're literally being prepared to live a life that is based on survival. So the value systems, the ethics that we're given, the ideology that we have it's all about survival. Now, in order to do that, in order to survive the way that most people are being raised, they don't understand the correlation with the idea that I need approval for that to happen. So my survival's, like if I'm working for you, if you hire me to go do a job, I need your approval to stay in that job. You're in control of my income.
Right.
Right? So if I don't have your approval, whether you don't like me or I'm not doing a good job or I'm a jerk or I'm not showing up or whatever the reason is, you could be like, David, you're out of here. I've got somebody else tomorrow that'll take your place, right? People know this. And they're not given any other options in life to go do something else, like be an entrepreneur or work for themselves. So because that's not happening, the amount of self-responsibility and confidence that is needed for that, they're not being prepared for, because school does not prepare us for that, right? We don't learn how to make money in school. We don't learn how to run a business in school. If you go to school to become an attorney, a doctor, a dentist, they don't teach you how to run a business. They don't teach you how to make money. They teach you how to be an attorney, a doctor, or a dentist, right?
Right.
So when it comes to holding yourself accountable and really having the confidence to go out there and influence other people to either buy your products or your services or join your team or whatever, people are not prepared to do that because they were never taught it to begin with. If your parents didn't know it, the teachers that you were working with, they obviously don't know it, right? Because they're part of the system.
Right.
It's totally not being done. In fact, the opposite's being done, where it says conform.
Right.
So you don't build any self-confidence if you have to conform. You don't ever even get to really know who the hell you are if you have to constantly conform.
Right. And then, so not only does this hurt our sort of self-trust to begin with, and doesn't even begin to build the platform that you need or the foundation you need to thrive with that, but it creates a fear-based mentality, because it only teaches you to think in this very structured, unquestionable, very within the box way. And what I think is so relevant to this, and what I think really makes the difference between this mentality versus it is mostly about entrepreneurship, but really any sort of ownership over your life, is that you're thinking more, based on the opportunities that are there instead of the obstacles. And like that fundamental difference, I think, is what's so crucial, and what I wish I could tell everyone to really see that that's how we've been trained. And it's so unfortunate, because it really does leak over into every part of your life if you can only see the obstacles or the ways in which things aren't working. And I loved how you pointed it out so clearly. All right. My next question for you is turning over to the Science of Getting Rich, our favorite book. So I just want to know what, I know that you've done so much on this and I'm sure we could go on about it for forever, but if you had 3 takeaways for someone that reads it the first time. And so I did a podcast episode on this a couple of weeks ago, and I really tried to go back to when I read it that first time, because now when I read it, I get something different out of it. Now it helps me get to a different income level or whatever. But when I first read it, it was very different. So if you can take yourself back to that when you first read it and you were just like, wow, I never really realized this. Could you think of some of those takeaways?
So I think the first one would be that I think people, if they're paying attention to themselves as they're going through life, we have this sense that something's not right. We don't know what it is. So we look on the news, or we're watching life go on through social media or whatever, and we know that something is just off about the way the world works. I had a real sense of that started actually about the age of 4 years old, right? So I was raised Catholic also. And, you hear that you come from a loving God, yet we see all this, garbage that's going on in the world. That didn't make sense to me. Like, something's wrong.
Yeah.
I happen to then make the determination that there's something we don't understand. So one thing that I think that I was fortunate about was I liked science in school. So I got to understand the cause and effect of things. And I realized that, I think this whole universe operates on cause and effect. It'd be interesting to find out how, and then how does money and people and all that do that? So when I read the book, what it did was it put all that disorganized information in my mind in order. It was like it gave me a picture. I could see how it all works, right? So I understood what I always felt was that the idea that we're told that we live in a world of lack is not true.
Right.
That we live in a world of abundance. There's all abundance. And even he points out in the Science of Getting Rich, even if we run out of one resource, another will be created or we'll become aware of it. Which, if you pay attention to history, that's exactly the way that it has worked. But everybody always wants you to think that we're ready to fall off the edge of the earth out there tomorrow, know. But they don't understand that those are people that have agendas and that they're pushing ideologies on us for their purpose. So I think that there's the overarching thing that I got from the book at first. But then I started to understand how money works. That it really comes from one source, which is the universe, but it comes through people. So there was that. And I thought that was really big, because if you're raised Midwest middle class, you go to work for somebody, you think money comes from them. And you're actually trained that money comes from them. In your mind, money comes from that person.
Right.
So I have to adjust my behavior so that I can keep getting money from that person.
Right.
Right? But if I change that, if I understand money doesn't come from that person, I can build myself up so that I can bring in money from anywhere based on what I want, and then the needs of the whole and whatever my purpose is in life. I also understood how to be grateful for everything in my life. It really pointed out, because he says gratitude's what keeps you connected to your source of supply, right? So be grateful for everything, because everything is contributed to that. I never realized that until I read that. I was like, oh, he means everything in your life has contributed to this. Yeah, because you wouldn't be the person that you are if, everything hadn't happened precisely the way that it happened. I heard somebody say, if your mom had went and had one more glass of wine, you wouldn't be here, right? So, there's so many things that had to happen precisely in order for me to be here, in order for you to actually be here.
Right.
So there's that. And then my favorite chapter is chapter 14 in the book, which is the impression of increase. And that helped me really understand why people have a desire for more, and that they're always looking for more. And of course, we were raised with the idea that more is a bad thing.
Right.
If we want more, we should just settle with our lot in life and not take more than we need, or ask for more than we need, or even desire more than we need, because that's foolish.
Right.
That chapter just totally set me free. When I read that, I'm like, yes, it is totally okay for me to want what it is that I want. It's natural. It's the way all of life works.
Right.
to want to be more, to do more, to have more, to contribute more. It's all about more.
Right.
So that's where it started for me with the book, and that made such a mind shift that I really began to look at the entire world totally different once I saw that.
Yeah, amazing. And it sounds like it gave a lot of the cause that you hadn't really identified at the time to the effect of you having raised your income so significantly all those years prior, because things like gratitude, being, like having a positive attitude, you didn't really see that was the cause, but that was the cause. And your effect was that your income grew so much. Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for sharing. I have one more question for you, and then I have just a couple biggest vision fire questions. But my question for you about your, everything you've built now, your story is amazing. You have this amazing company. You help people all over the world. You have a multi-million-dollar company. So how do you keep pushing your vision? Because so much of your vision is now, what you're living. How do you keep up leveling, and how do you recommend to your clients that they do it?
That is really such a good question. So, and it's funny that you're asking it at this specific time in my life, because my vision has actually changed. It's expanded quite a bit. I've gone through stages, and I had a very interesting, when I first did this, it was kind of like, I want to become a millionaire. That was my first vision.
Mm-hmm.
Like I wanted to help people. I knew that I was put here to help people, but I wanted to become a millionaire. So I accomplished that really quick. And then it was like, okay, well, that's kind of cool. I got to buy almost anything that I want now. So now, kind of like, what's that? So then it was like, I'm going to build a multi-million-dollar company. I want to help as many people as I can. I was also raising my children at the time, so I was very focused. That was another huge part of my life. So I wanted to I knew I was going to do other things, but I really needed to get my family raised before I could do that.
Right.
Because I wanted to be really involved in their upbringing. So all of that got done. All of that was completed. And I had an interesting experience about 10 years ago where I had a client that I was coaching who was actually getting some kind of a degree in astrology, right? And I was coaching her on her business. I don't even remember what her business was at the time, but she was going to school getting a degree in astrology, and she was telling me about it. And I knew a little bit about astrology. And she said, I'm writing my thesis paper on you. And I'm like, on me? She's like, yeah, on you. Like on your life, on like what you've done. But I'm going to do it from an astrological perspective. That's the way that we have to do this. Would you mind if I do that? And I'm like, no, that's cool. So I'm like, she's like, yeah, I'll send it to you. It'll be a stack like this, but I'll send it to you when it gets done. So she sends it to me. Now, this blew me away, right? Because this woman did not know personal aspects of my life. She wrote a paper based on my entire life from the moment of conception until like whenever I die, which that's not in the paper, but it's just about my life. So she was so accurate in everything that she said to me, what time were you born? And I said, I'm pretty sure it was at 2:22 in the morning, right? That's when I was born. So when she sent me the paper, she said, no, that didn't line up. She said it was 2:21.
Oh my God.
Like, lady, how do you know when I was born, right? So I actually called my mother. I'm like, Mom, what time was I born? She said 2:21. I'm like, would you pull out my birth certificate and look? She's like, no, it's 2:21. She's like, I was there.
I'm like positive. That's wild.
And I'm like, no kidding. So then when she took me through everything, she was pointing out all these different ages that different significant things would happen. And she was spot on with every one. Wow. And then she said something that really blew me away. She said, between the age of 50 and 52, there's going to be a radical shift that happens in your life that's going to cause you to expand like you have no idea, and you're going to have this massive impact upon the world. And I'm like, okay, like, that's cool. Like, great, perfect. So I remember when I turned 50, that was kind of a rough birthday, right? Like you don't feel like you're 20. And like when you're in your 40s, you can be like, I'm not that far from 20, but so when I turned, it was a little bit of like a mind, you got to wrap your mind around, oh shit, I'm actually 50 years old.
This is happening.
Yeah. So that was 2 years ago. And the amount of change that has happened in my life in the last 2 years has been absolutely astounding. And then this new vision comes in about how, which I'm not going to share the exact details of, but I can tell you that it's absolutely huge, and it's happening. Like everything that needs to happen for it is actually happening. And I would not have guessed that 2 years ago. I'd have been like, you're crazy. There's no signs that any of this stuff is actually going to happen. This is what I'm doing. It's all changed. It's all changed. So, wow. Yeah. So, it's great. I'm excited. It's a lot of fun. The business is expanding like crazy. And how do I keep my vision going? I'm grateful every day. Every day I think to myself, I get to live this life. I had the audacity to go out and make a different decision than everybody else did and choose to live life on my terms, right? So instead of, running a business, you're always dealing with problems, right? Yeah. It's a never-ending thing. Yeah. I'm grateful for all of it.
Yeah.
I don't get upset. I don't get down. I don't get depressed. I'm like, bring it. This is.
I signed up for it.
It's my life. I'm totally up for it.
Yeah.
So I think gratitude allows me, to keep seeing different ways to help people. I'm a consummate student. Like I'm always studying. So I'm always trying to find a way to coach better and a way to understand people better, a way to recognize patterns better, not, in business and in behaviors for marketing and, sales and everything that we're doing. But I really believe, because I've got that gratitude, that it really allows a much bigger space for stuff to come into my life. I think when we get resistant and resentful and angry, then the vision goes away because we're focused on what we don't want. So I think conceptually, it's simpler than people think, because you're saying gratitude, but it really needs to be a focus, and it really needs to be a deep feeling in your heart. You need to really look at your life, even all the bad stuff, and understand how essential every piece is in order for you to be the special person that you are, and for whatever it is that's coming in your life. Because I believe everybody's life can be amazing if they would just start to think to themselves, my life could actually be amazing. It's really up to me.
Beautiful, beautifully put. It's such a great, it sounds so simple, but it's so easy to forget that there's only so many hours in the day, so many times you have to pay attention to things, so many things you can be, that can be part of your capacity. And if you're allowing the stress, the issues, anything like that, that's like a surefire way to not expand your vision at all, or to even maybe fulfill the one that you're in the middle of. So just thank you for sharing that. That was great. And I'm very excited to see what's next for you. I'll be looking out for that. All right. My 5 questions for you. Well, I think you just answered this, but the question was, when things go wrong, how do you keep fighting for your vision? I'm guessing gratitude, but I'll let you.
That gratitude. That's the first thing I'm grateful for it. I don't get upset when something goes wrong.
Great. If you could pick one thing you're most proud of?
Helping people.
Beautiful. A podcast or book you recommend?
I really, a book. Well, The Science of Getting Rich would be one book, but I'll tell you what, there's a book that we were talking about trust earlier. Yeah. People should get Alanya Van Zant's book on trust.
Trust. Yeah.
It's absolutely phenomenal. It really is. If a person applies that, it'll change your life.
Awesome. And one thing that always brightens your day?
One thing that always brightens my day. My dog, Ferguson.
That's a great answer.
Yeah, he's the guy's happy all the time. When I wake up in the morning, he's there wagging his tail at me. When I come home from work, he's there wagging. Talk about a positive attitude. He's never down. And, yeah, so he always brightens my day
so easily.
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. And handles, website, how can people find out more about you?
DavidNeagle.com, and they can get a free download there called You Were Born to Be a Success. It'll change your life.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David. This was incredible.
You're welcome. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.